convolution right here. It's called dynamic mixing, and what this is a ducker. Best way to understand this, let's say that you're standing in a gymnasium, there's somebody about 10 feet in front of you, and they're talking to you. Right? You're in this very ambient environment, but when you're looking at them and they're talking to you, your eyes are cueing your brain to focus in on that direct sound. The person stops talking, and that's when you really notice the ambience of the room. This is a psychoacoustic effect, and your brain does this automatically. You focus in on the sound that you're looking at. And the proverb allows us to simulate this effect by having a ducker. And what the ducker does is it pulls down the reverb based on the strength of the input signal. When the input signal is loud, the reverb gets pulled down. As the input signal decays away, the reverb swells up. And again, this is for the sake of clarity. So I'm going to make this really obvious here. You should be able to hear this. So when we get those peaks in there, the reverb is pulled down so we can hear the clarity of the guitar part, and when the guitar is mellowing out a little bit, that's when that wash comes in. So this is the proverb. Let's take a look. What else we got to show you here? Convolution reverb included with DP6, very efficient on the CPU, included impulse responses, drag and drop any audio file into proverb as an impulse response. The dynamics control, the ducker, 4 different types of mix control, and a 4-band EQ. This is the proverb convolution reverb in Digital Performer version 6. One more thing to show you, the Masterworks leveler. Everybody's going to have their favorite features in Digital Performer, and I think the leveler might be one of mine. Here is the Masterworks leveler. We call it Masterworks because it's part of our Masterworks series, 64-bit processing, very high resolution processing. We call it a leveler because this is a dynamics plugin that is modeled on the LA2A compressor. Anybody here ever use a real LA2A? Okay, fortunate. That's a very nice piece of gear. The LA2A was introduced in the 1960s, around 1965 or so, and it was originally designed to be a program limiter for radio stations. Radio stations need to make sure that the signal didn't exceed their FCC regulation. So the LA2A was brought in as a program limiter for radio stations, and musicians started to use it. They started to run individual tracks through this LA2A and subgroups of the drums and the entire mix. There's a lot of compressors and limiters around, but why the LA2A? What was so special about that? People are still using the LA2A now. It's this sort of holy grail of compressors. What we've done is we've modeled our Masterworks leveler on the LA2A. The LA2A is a photo-optical compressor. What that means is that the input signal comes in and triggers something that generates light. Then you have something that senses light, a photosensor. And the photosensor is what controls gain reduction. So as the light increases, the photosensor notices that and pulls down gain reduction. You ever use a compressor on a vocal track? You heavily compress the vocal track and you notice that you've lost all your sibilants. Only S's have turned into TH. Why? What happened? Where did that high frequency distortion come from? Well, if you have a compressor that is based strictly on amplitude, first of all, the compressor doesn't do anything until the signal goes above a threshold. And then when that signal is above the threshold, the compressor isn't caring about the shape of the waveform. It just looks at the amplitude and pulls the waveform down. And in the process, distorts the shape of the waveform, and therefore you lose the detail and you distort the high frequency content. Your S's turn into THs. But the way the LA2A works with its photosensor circuit is it wasn't looking at an amplitude, it was looking at the shape of the waveform. So it can see attack transients. It has a 10 microsecond attack. So that means that even if you're playing individual hi-hat hits, the leveler is catching those attacks. And it also means that it leaves the shape of the waveform alone and just pulls down the transients. So you can heavily compress a vocal track and there's going to be no high frequency distortion. So that's the attack. Now what about the release? Where's my release control? How long does it take to release that gain reduction? Well, look at the sun, look away. Okay, I'm seeing spots, but I can still see. Look at the sun and stare at it for a moment, look away. I don't see anything until my eyes readjust. The photosensor circuit works in the same way. You saturate the photosensor circuit with a very loud, sustained signal, it absorbs all that energy, and then when that signal decays away, the photosensor takes time to release its energy and let go of the gain compression. If you have a very fast transient, then the photo sensor lets go of its energy very quickly. So the release time is constantly variable, and it's following the program material. This is not a fixed release time. The release time is based on the program material. A couple other things I want to show you before I actually play this for you. We've got 4 different optocoupler models, right? The T4 circuit was the circuit in the LA2A that had the photo emitter and the photo sensor. And we have modeled a whole bunch of different LA2As because from year to year, they sound different. The original LA2As, the photo sensor circuit was handmade, mixing up these toxic chemicals. You can't even do that stuff anymore. You've got to get special permits to work with these chemicals. So nowadays, when they make photo sensor circuits, it's all made by machine. So the newer LA2As had different responses than the older LA2As. And we've modeled these. We've got a fast modern, a slow modern. Fast and slow are talking about relative attack times. And the modern compressors have faster release, quicker release. And then vintage fast, vintage slow. The older circuits, because they were handmade, they were a little bit more spongy, a little bit more organic, and they took their time with the attacks and release. So if I'm running a hi-hat track or something that's very percussive with a lot of fast transients, I'll probably use one of the modern modules. If I'm working with a vocal track and I just want to smooth it out, make it really sweet, I'll use one of the vintage models. One other thing to show you here, we've got 2 different bypass switches. The plug-in bypass switch, what we call an active bypass switch. Why do I need 2 bypass switches? Well, with the original LA2A, you would do something called waking the cell. Remember, that cell's got to absorb energy before it's doing its thing. So typically you play back a couple of bars of your music, wake the cell up, rewind, and then play your mix back. And the Masterworks leveler is a model of the LA2A. So if we bypass the plug-in, that means that the cell goes cold. I turn the plug-in back on, and now the cell's got to warm up again. But with the active bypass switch, I can bypass the plug-in by sending the input signal directly to output, but the input signal is still feeding the photo sensor circuit. So when I bring the leveler back into the circuit, the cell is already warmed up, it's already woken up, so I can do a true AMD bypass. All right, let's listen to this thing. I'm going to play back a full mix. This is a dance track produced by Fernando Garibay. The artist is Valeria. And we're going to squash this. Gain reduction. Very accurate metering. Alright, we're pulling down the transients, so now we need to bring up some makeup gain. Alright, we're looking at 10 dB of gain reduction on a full bandwidth mix. No high frequency distortion. No pumping and breathing. You put 10 dB of gain reduction onto a mix using a different compressor, and violent things will happen to the sound because you have a fixed attack and a fixed release, and it's only looking at the amplitude, it's not looking at the shape of the waveform. But with the Masterworks leveler, we can do extreme amounts of peak reduction, and it still sounds musical. This is a new plugin from O2, the Masterworks leveler, and this is an expensive plugin. It makes your tracks sound very expensive. It's very light on the CPU, very efficient on the CPU,